357 Magnum versus 45 ACP and short barrels. And what we have today is our Fort Scott TUI ammunition. So TUI stands for tumble upon impact. So these rounds are basically designed to create more damage than a full metal jacket via tumbling. So that's another way to go about having damage. You know, tumbling, also fluted style bullets kind of do similar things. So the benefit to this is, you know, you don't necessarily have to have a lot of velocity, and out of a short barrel, you know, it doesn't matter if you get expansion because you're still going to get the same effect even if your velocity drops down pretty low. So our 357 Magnum is a 125 grain solid copper bullet that's rated at 1424 feet per second through a 6-inch barrel. And our 45 ACP is a 180 grain solid copper bullet that is rated at 989 feet per second through a 5-inch barrel. I'm using a lot shorter barrels today. My 2-inch barrel Taurus 605 and 357 Magnum, and my 3.3-inch barrel Shield 45. Now, both of these are short barrels, but they do have about the same amount of actual barrel travel in those guns. If we take a look here at the overall size of those handguns, they're almost the same size, and from the bullet nose to the muzzle, 3.3 inches is nearly identical to this 2-inch barrel revolver. So it's really fair in that aspect. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to go into plain 10% clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those are. You know, no fabric in the way that could change any of this, no rib stimulation or anything like that, and we'll see what the best potential for tumbling is in our plain clear ballistics shot. Then I'll move on to doing more of a real world simulation, and 4 layers of sweatshirt material is what I use in this first 3-inch piece here. That's redundant in this test, but I like to stay consistent from test to test. So we'll do 4 layers of sweatshirt material followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard at the back to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches, and 8 inches in a real living target. So we'll do our plain clear ballistic shot, then our real world simulation shot, and then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 357 Magnum 125 grain solid copper bullet. This is rated at 1424 feet per second through a 6-inch barrel. Let's see if we get through my little 2-inch barrel here. I'm going to fire these single action because of the gloves and everything, and fire next to expensive chronographing camera and all that. But let's see what we get here, see how close we get to that 1424 feet per second out of this little snub nose. $1163, 1084, 1119, 1118, 1069. So pretty light for a 357 Magnum. 125 grains out of this particular revolver. I typically get, you know, maybe 1250 feet per second, so that's pretty light. 45 ACP, 180 grain. This is rated at 989 through a 5-inch barrel. Let's see how close I get to that in my little 3.3-inch shield here. See how close I get to 989 feet per second. $938, 1034, 1040, 1035, 1019. So yeah, we're above the rated velocity out of a shorter barrel than what it's rated out of. That's pretty interesting. Let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, so the cloud cover has suddenly left, which makes it very difficult to see through these gel blocks with all the snow reflection and everything, so I apologize for that. But we have our 357 Magnum. We're going to do our plain clear ballistics gel shot to see how these compare. So let's see what we get with our 357 Magnum. That hits pretty hard. And that thing really wants to go to upward angle, kind of weird. 45 auto, See how this does. Let's go take a look. All right, so I did shoot a little bit to the right to make sure those paths do not intersect or anything like that. What I'm seeing here is pretty reliable tumbling with the 357, but not with the 45. I don't see any reliable tumbling damage. Now, when we go into this gel block with our 357, it looks like right at about 3.5, 4 inches, it starts that tumbling process. It does a good amount of damage. It looks almost exactly like a Extreme Defender, because it is operating on similar principles. And then it gets narrow again and maybe get a little bit larger path towards the end there. But definitely tumbled right away, but the 45 does not appear to be tumbling much at all. In fact, it's very similar penetration to what I get with Full Metal Jacket 45. So I don't know. With our 357, we got about 20.5 inches of penetration, and with our 45 we got about 23.5. So that's a bit much for penetration. That doesn't necessarily mean everything though, because when we put our rib simulation in there, that will likely change quite a bit. So let's put on our fabric, put in our rib simulation, and see how these compare in our real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation, 4 layers of sweatshirt material. I know that's redundant, but I like to stay consistent from test to test. Followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle. Followed by 1/4 inch of medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum. 16 more inches of clear ballistics and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back. I like to keep these bullets within that back rib simulation. If they do go through it, I'll give it as much as 3 inches. And beyond that, past 3 inches past the back rib simulation, it could indicate it could pass through an average size individual from a front on shot. So I like to just keep them within that back rib simulation if possible. So 357 Magnum, let's see how this does. All right. Another weird up angling thing going on there. They want to drift up, but that's something that can happen with, especially with yawing and tumbling. So let's see what we get here with our 45 auto. Let's go take a look. All right, so again, that 45 auto kind of acted like a Full Metal Jacket, you know, with the fabric and the ribs here, rib simulation. The 357 Magnum seemingly did the same thing, but I'm not seeing an effect of tumbling with that 45. I could just about guarantee if I pull that rib simulation out, we'll see, you know, a keyhole going through with the 357 on the bottom and not with the 45 on top. Yeah, so we're just going in straight with the 45 up there, but with the 357 starting to tumble. So yeah, it's not really performing as advertised with that 45 auto. And I kind of thought that was going to happen because that's not a very pointy bullet, and it's just not a very heavy weight to be a long bullet. So I kind of thought, well, it might not tumble well. It looks like it's really not. Now up here at about the 7-inch mark, it looks like it does start to tumble maybe. It's just not really reliable for what it's doing. The 357 seems to be more reliable for what it's doing. 357 just broke through that back rib simulation, so that's at 19.5 inches. Now the 45 stayed within the parameters I wanted to see. We're at 21.5 inches, so we are only at 2.5 inches past that back rib simulation. You know, I factor in about 3 inches would possibly be a pass through. So we're just barely there with that. So that's definitely some deep penetration, but it's just not performing really as advertised. This is where the 357 Magnum seems to be performing okay, kind of doing what it's designed to do. So let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at them, and then I'm going to shoot our steel target, see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel, our 357 and our 45, and we can see, you know, this has the proper length where it's a little bit too long to get some good tumbling. You know, I don't know why they didn't use a 230 grain with this, because that would have made it, you know, longer than a typical 230 grain lead core, because it's copper and less dense, and that could have created good tumbling. You know, the way it is now, the height of that bullet isn't much greater than the diameter, and that's not a good combination for tumbling. As well with this, you know, this is a good combination for tumbling because it's really long of a bullet compared to its diameter anyways. So no change to those bullets, not that there would be, because they are definitely solid core bullets. Solid copper, I should say. And the ones going through our real world simulation, no change to those. I put a little mark on the front there just to indicate that they went through the rib simulation, but you know, that didn't change them at all. MDF is nothing for solid copper. Here's the 45s. You know, you don't even scuff those bullets going through that rib sim. So interesting looking bullets overall. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 40 yards from the target. So I wanted to come back this far because with solid copper bullets, you know, I feel like they could be unpredictable when hitting that steel, and they could ricochet back because they're not going to deform quite as much as a lead core bullet. So I'll see how these do. And note here, even though the handguns are about the same overall size, the sight radius with the 45 is definitely a lot longer of a sight radius, so that makes it should make it theoretically a little bit easier. But let's see how I can get here with our 357 mag from 40 yards. All right, so those are all consistently hitting to the left. I think that's why it's missing off the target. But one thing about this, it's blasting me in the face with quite a bit of unburnt powder flakes or something like that. And before you say it's my revolver, I don't notice that with any other ammo. So I'm getting hit in the face, and I feel my thumb being hit with a lot of back pressure. So it's very interesting. So I'm going to aim a little bit to the right because of how far they're hitting to the left. All right, so I aimed off the target to the right and I was missing, and I aimed back on the target a little bit, just touching the edge of the right side of the target, and then I was able to start hitting a few more times. So very interesting there, but yeah, it's burning my face with that. That's weird. 45 auto. Let's see how this stuff does. Wow. I put that camera protector plate down there for a reason, and it did its job there, but there is no way I was not that off of where I'm aiming. I was aiming in the center of that steel, and parallax might throw that off a little bit, but the actual that plate I just hit, that camera protector plate, you know, I'd have to hit like 6-8 feet low and right. So I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna aim, I guess, at the head on that silhouette and a little bit to the left. Now it's hitting high. So 40 yards, it's far, but it's not that far. I mean, that's some of the weird stuff I might see if I was shooting at 100 yards and I can't dial it in. So I don't know what is going on with this ammo, but it is not remotely accurate for me out of these handguns. I didn't bring any other ammo with me, but I could prove it. I could put something traditional in there, you know, hit, you know, most of my shots reliably. With this, I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing where it's good. So it's interesting ammo overall, I'll say that much. Now, there was a joint agency ballistic test that was done with a bunch of law enforcement agencies, and that information has been redacted of who was in it. I just know it was around 2017-ish, and they tested a whole bunch of different newer ammo, including the fluted extreme defender type bullets and the TUI. And what they said was that they couldn't get reliable tumbling with it. That it was promising, but it wouldn't reliably do the same thing every time. That's kind of what I've seen with it too. It's just not reliably tumbling. Now, I would say it's not that bad of an option if the accuracy and shootability was normal, but it's really not. It's just kind of weird. It's all over the place for me, and people that have not seen my videos before will laugh and, oh, it's all you, buddy. And I'm not claiming I'm the best shot. I'm not claiming I'm as good as Buffalo Outdoors, but what I am saying is that this is not typical for me at all, and it should do a lot better than that. Another thing though, a lot of people will quote that ammo like this is good because of short-barreled handguns, especially 45, and if I had listened to everything that everybody said about short-barreled 45, I would be convinced that you could never get a hollow point to expand ever, even one time, any ammo at all. But from testing a lot of jacket hollow point ammo through the shield, I have found that probably 90% of the hollow points I test either expand really well or at least have some partial expansion. It's only about 10% that just straight up fail to expand. So I don't think ammo like this is necessary for a short-barreled handgun, especially in these two calibers. There's a lot better stuff out there. So I'm just not impressed with this ammo. I'm not impressed at all. I'll leave it at that and let you guys decide for yourselves. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like. And thanks for watching.